Hey everybody, this is Max from Center Music House, and this month, September 2023, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary. And to mark that historic milestone in our family business, I'm interviewing my dad, Corbit, who has been here for 50 years and then some. And we're going to talk about the history and share some stories about Center Music House with you also. Dad, thanks for joining me. How you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah.
So, Dad, what I want to get started with is just your background story, how you got started with music, and what led you to Center Music House. So, you're originally from Pennsylvania, right?
Pennsylvania, yes, indeedy.
You took accordion lessons.
That was my first love. I used to, back in the day, I would Sunday nights watch oftentimes the Lawrence Welk show with my grandfather and Myron Florin on the accordion. He just knocked my socks off. I just thought that was the greatest instrument. So my parents found a used accordion somewhere in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And for 25 bucks, I had my first instrument.
Can you tell me about the accordion lessons that you had?
So the accordion lessons, I had, they set me up with in a little music shop that had two little rooms in the back of the shop for teaching. But I didn't get far in my lessons because we sat in a teeny piano studio with the music on the piano, sitting on the piano bench, the teacher and myself, small room, learning how to play the Volga Boatman or something like that, and the teacher's smoking in this little room, which is not uncommon back in the day.
Sure.
Even in the early days of Center Music House.
Yeah. Okay.
And
we'll get there.
As a little kid, I had asthma and whooping cough and all kinds of breathing issues, and I just couldn't hack it in the studio, and I wasn't forthcoming enough with my parents to tell them why. I just thought I didn't want to do lessons anymore.
So not a great environment for an asthmatic kid.
Not at all.
Face to face with a chain smoker.
Yeah, in a little room.
Yeah.
Wearing an accordion.
So the accordion got put up on a shelf for a little while.
That was it.
And then what was your next instrument, and when did you pick that up?
The next instrument was really air guitar.
Okay.
Yeah. Once the British invasion happened and the Beatles came along and Dave Clark 5 and everybody, the Stones, everybody came with it, I would jump around the house playing air guitar. I went out and was able to buy a record player, so we were always spinning 45s, always running up to the store to get the latest Beatles release.
Yeah.
Or whatever, and I would jump around the house, drive my mother crazy playing air guitar, and she finally took me to a little music store.
Yeah.
And for 99 bucks, which was a fair amount of money back then.
Not nothing.
Again, bought me a cheap Japanese guitar and a little amplifier, and that lasted me into my college years.
You moved to Framingham in 1971.
70.
Right? 1970.
70.
Okay. What were you doing before you moved to Framingham?
It was a very busy time back there in the late 60s because we were still at war. We were still in Vietnam. And I had gone through college. I graduated, and once graduated, immediately you lost your student deferral. 2S went right to 1A at the draft board.
So that means that you weren't protected.
You're eligible for the draft.
Right.
And right after college graduation, that summer, I got called up with hundreds of other guys to go in and be processed for possible induction and sent home to wait.
Okay.
So I got a job as a roofer.
Okay.
And I was roofing for the summer.
And waiting to be
called up,
service?
yeah, to see what would happen.
Wow.
And nothing happened, and I had planned to go to spend another year in school, grad school actually, and went off to UMass Amherst actually for a year of grad school, and that came to an end in the spring of 1970 when there was this little event called Kent State. National Guardsman made a mess at Kent State, and school ended. The year did not finish. By then I discovered I really would rather play my guitar than go to school anymore.
Okay.
So it was a good time to drop out, and I went back to my career as a roofer. Spent the summer roofing until I met my friends Richard and Sally, who said, come up to Framingham, get a job here. So I packed up my stuff and bought a VW Bug and headed north.
All right.
Yeah.
Once you're in Framingham, you're living with Richard and Sally, working at a computer company. And how did you find Center Music House?
Well, when I was living in Framingham Center, they lived right on Pleasant Street. I was working in a fledgling computer industry at the time, and needed something to get my mind off of that and get back into playing guitar. So there was a little drum shop in Framingham Center called the Eli Rabkin Drum Studio. And I walked in the door there to take some guitar lessons, just to have some recreation.
At the time when you were taking guitar lessons, it was not called Center Music House.
No, it was the Eli Rabkin Drum Studio. Eli was a society drummer. He wasn't a rock and roller. He was an older guy, but he had taught drums in his house because he was a drummer, and he was making money on the side as a teacher. And his wife Mary eventually kicked him out of the house. Said, "You take that drum stuff elsewhere." So
the studio,
the
not
studio,
him.
Yeah, the studio.
He was still living there.
He was still living at home,
but the students had to go.
Get him out of there. So he opened up a little studio in Framingham Center, not in this particular building.
Okay.
This is not the original Eli Rabkin Drum Studio, but he found this place and rented it out and was teaching drums, and then he discovered that he could offer more teachings if he hired more teachers. So he was friends with Bill Levitt, who was the founder and pretty much main guy at the guitar department at Berklee College of Music. And he would call Bill and hire teachers. He'd say, "Hey, I need somebody to teach guitar." So he would hire a couple of guitar teachers, maybe another drum teacher, a saxophone teacher from Berklee. And I ended up coming in here and getting hooked up with Charlie Chapman, who became my guitar teacher.
And so what's the connection between you taking lessons and then working for Eli?
Eli was, he was in the process of trying to expand, and he had formed a partnership with a fellow from Burlington named Dominic, and they were going to have a chain of music stores and studios.
Okay.
And the first one they opened was in the Burlington Mall. The place that I was working in was in Burlington, right across the street from the mall. And he had expressed concern that he didn't have enough help there for the Christmas season coming up. So I said, well, I can help you at night there if you like. I'll just zip across, it's literally across the street from the mall.
Okay.
And that got me into music retail.
After the Christmas season, did he say, "Hey, Corbett, come to 18 Main Street"?
His partner wanted them to really concentrate on the expansion of this idea of music stores. Eli didn't really want to give up the store, so he asked me if I would give up my life in the computer world and come run this little music store in Framingham for him until he could develop his other chain of stores. So I thought I'd rather play guitar than play computer.
Okay.
So I gave up a very lucrative career.
Computers never went anywhere.
That was not going to go anywhere. So I gave up that career and came down and ran this place so he could concentrate on his chain of music stores.
Okay, so Eli is expanding his business with his friend Dom, and he gives you Center Music House to run, basically.
There was no give.
Okay. He just said, "You're doing this?"
Yeah, here's a job for you.
Yeah.
So I ran this for him for probably a little bit over a year. During the lessons. Again, at this point, it was primarily, it was about 50-50 retail and teaching. This part of the building didn't exist then. It was just the original house portion.
Which is pretty small.
Which was small. It did not include the basement.
Wow.
So everything was just on the house side of the building.
The drums were taught in what's our office
In the
now?
office, yeah. The drums were there. And there were maybe 3 studios upstairs, and that was it.
So pretty small teaching operation.
Pretty small teaching operation.
Drum teacher, piano teacher, guitar teacher.
And woodwinds.
And woodwinds.
That was typically about it. Yeah.
Wow. Eli was not the owner for much longer.
He decided finally to free himself of this business. Sold the Eli Rabkin Drum Studio to a Framingham family who were a couple who bought it for their son, who had recently got out of college and was looking for something to do. He owned a set of drums, we call him a drummer.
Okay.
But he owned a set of drums. And but so they thought that having something in the music business would be the way for him to go.
Okay.
Because he didn't know what he was doing out of college. So they bought it for him.
And that didn't take.
He really didn't like being tied down to a music store. He'd rather be out playing in his band.
Yeah.
And driving his cars around town. And so, though they had asked me to stay on with them for a while to help him get their feet, help him get his feet wet in the business, it wasn't a relationship that was working for me. So I took off for a little while. And I think he lasted probably less than a year in the business.
Yeah.
And Mom and Dad were stuck with the business. He couldn't make it happen. They didn't want it to fall apart.
Yeah.
And they asked me to come back and run the store part of the operation.
Okay.
Which I did.
What are their names, by the way?
Well, that was Milt and Marilyn, Uncle Milty.
Okay.
And Marilyn.
Can you just like paint a picture of what the store was like back in the mid-70s? Just what you guys were selling, who was working here, just like a snapshot.
Sure.
Because I imagine it's so different.
It's so different.
Compared to what it is now, what were some of the big differences?
Big differences are the retail, merchandise.
Okay.
Back in the day, you would find a wall full of Les Pauls, Gibson Les Pauls, Strats. In the acoustic, we had Martin guitars, Santa Cruz guitars, Larrivee guitars, all high-end acoustic guitars.
Wow.
A lot of pretty guitars, expensive guitars, unprofitable guitars.
Okay.
So, and at that point, we also had tons of sound systems. We were a big PV dealer.
Yeah.
A lot of PV sound systems, PV amplifiers, Marshall amplifiers, went through all kinds of different amplifiers.
Yeah.
And there would be, stacks of amps back here, stacks of drum sets, Pearl drums, Ludwig drums.
Wow.
A lot of stuff filling this space.
And you had told me before that a lot of that retail, the high-end gear, the PA systems, that was there to cater to all the local bands who played around here, right? Because the music scene was really different. Different
music scene. In the 70s, maybe even into the early 80s, you could cruise up and down Route 9, and on a weekend night, Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, you could easily see 10 different clubs with 10 different bands.
Wow.
And the difference with that was that clubs gave something for young musicians to aspire to. Hey, I want to play at Timothy's, or hey, I want to play at the Red Barn. I want to play. I can't wait till I could play at the Meadows. Back in those days, the drinking age was 18, which meant you had a lot of younger crowd who could get into the bars. And at some point, they knocked that back up to 21, and knocking up to a combination of knocking the age back up to 21. And I think what happened was there were many. Insurance changed a lot, I think, for club owners, where they got a lot more liable. Probably more lawyers got into the business of car crashes and so forth. Oh. And so clubs started backing down. But even still, there were clubs on Route 9. There was a Monticello where I remember dealing with the Pointer Sisters who came to play there, and Randy California and Spirit. People like that, you would come into the shop. Hey, I need a tambourine. Hey, I need some drumsticks. Hey, we need a cowbell.
Any other brushes with fame through Center Music House? Any other famous people you like?
We used to do, back in the day, we would do clinics sometimes with artists representing different product. And one of our first ones was a fellow who was a clinician for PV, a guy named Earl Slick. He'd played with John Lennon and David Bowie. He's on a bunch of albums. You can look him up.
Can you just describe what a clinic is?
A clinic is when an artist will come and put on a dog and pony show about their guitar or their art representing a particular company. And they would hand out free T-shirts and give autographs and question and answer. And our biggest clinic was with this guy... Zakk Wylde, yeah. Zakk was representing Gibson guitars. So we rented a big hall in downtown Framingham, and Zakk had his list of, he wanted 2 Marshall stacks and yada, yada, yada. So we put together what we could.
Zakk Wylde, he at that time had just joined with Ozzy Osbourne.
He'd been with Ozzy. He got big with Ozzy.
Yeah.
So the idea was that the way he did his clinics, we would put together a little band with him. The band was going to be drum teacher here, Ed Barry, who I was in a band with at the time, the Weird Cowboys. And I was going to play bass, and Zakk would play guitar, obviously. Knowing he was coming to town, I went out and I bought every Ozzy tape I could find, and I was shedding Ozzy tunes on Mountain Man or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I was trying to learn all the Ozzy stuff to be able to play along with Zakk. So Zakk, I picked him up at Logan Airport, trucked him down here, and we did a sound check and everything, and all they wanted to play was the Allman Brothers.
Southern rock.
Southern rock.
Allman Brothers.
So I was stuck with all these Ozzy tapes.
Yeah.
And I didn't know Melissa or any of the Allman Brothers stuff, so I struggled along the best I could.
Yeah.
Loudest thing I had ever done.
Yeah.
You know, 2 Marshall half stacks. But it was a lot of fun. And
I think we have some footage of that.
Uh-oh.
Help me help this up a little bit. This is Zakk Wylde.
So I just want to take a step back into Center Music House a little bit and your journey, because at a certain point you bought the business from the Egan's family. And I'm wondering, at what point did you realize or say to yourself, this is what I want to do. This is my calling.
Yeah.
Was there a particular moment? What was that like for you?
I'd always loved music stores. Even as a kid, my brother and I, as teenagers, would go up to the end of the street, hop on the Chester Row bus, go into Upper Darby, hop on the go into Center City, Philadelphia, and spend a Saturday walking around checking out every music store. Loved music stores.
Cool.
Just loved doing that. It was just a vibe.
Yeah.
Before I went to school, I had a, we won't go there. That's all right.
Are you sure?
Well, I had, prior to going to college, one of the incoming things was to do an aptitude test. You had to, at the time, you had to do an aptitude test. You had to do a swim test.
A swim test?
You had to show you could swim.
Okay.
For college.
Very important.
Very important.
You had to swim to 8 a.m. English.
Yeah, something like that. But I had an aptitude test, and the aptitude test came back with 2 things, music and business.
Really?
Really.
Wow.
Yep. So I majored in German.
Why German?
Cut.
So you're at Center Music House, you're running the show, the Agans are down in Florida, and you have this aptitude test that says music and business is your thing.
Yeah.
And so did all those pieces kind of fit together and you said, yeah, I think this is me. I think this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah,
No more German.
Well, it was all a matter of part of that and part just following opportunity. At some point, Milt had a heart attack down in Florida.
Wow.
So he had a wake-up call. And I went down to visit him. We had a big chat and decided to do a transition and buy the business from him.
Helped him out and was a good opportunity for you.
Believed him and opened up a door of opportunity, yeah.
And that was 1981?
80.
1980. And then it's you're Center Music House. Well, you're the owner, and there are a lot of people working here and helping you out. We've talked a lot about the retail side. Can you talk about the education and the lessons side and what that was like at that point?
Yeah. Yeah, well, we still had good relationship with Berklee College of Music for teachers. We had expanded the studios a little bit. We created a couple of studios on the first floor and expanded studios on the second floor. And we had, I don't know, maybe 5 teachers at a time teaching. But people would come in, pay for a lesson 1 week at a time. Here's my $12 for
in
my
cash.
lesson. Here's my $12. Here's my $12. Writing up a receipt for 1 lesson. In that bin.
Oh, we still have the bin.
We have the bin.
Yeah.
Click 1 lesson, $12. And it continued that for some time. And we were doing supplemental things. We were doing recitals. Tried to do recitals yearly. At one point, we put together a little jazz band. We actually have maybe a 12 or 14-piece jazz band that performed at the original Shoppers World. Sure. Yeah, we hauled everything down there and set up a drum set and all the music stands and so forth. That was led by Claudia Violette and Dave Summers. So we were always doing as much educational stuff as we could wrangle into this place. And always a good stream of teachers, typically sourced from Berkeley or the conservatory at the time.
You've told me a lot of stories about what it's been like to run this place, and one of the things that comes up is it's a story of ups and downs, lots of challenges. Obviously, running your own business is not easy, especially when you're the sole owner. I'm lucky that I have you to help me out, but back then it was just you. Can you talk about some of the challenges that you faced as a business owner back then?
Well, first of all, I was lucky in that it wasn't just me, because the same year I bought the business, I married your mother.
Oh.
So I had a partner. She wasn't totally active in the business, but she was my support arm.
Yeah.
And did what was necessary to help out. So I wasn't alone in that sense.
That's awesome.
And coincidentally, I met her here. She was a piano student at Center Music House. So we used to flirt over the counter, and eventually we tied
Gross!
Oh!
No, that's awesome.
So, but yeah, it was a tough time. I bought the business in 1980, back in the 80s. I can't tell you exactly when, but we were dealing with double-digit inflation. You think inflation is bad now? Prime rate was double digits. That means if you need to borrow money, it costs a lot of money. At the time, there were plans available, a thing called floor planning, where you would get inventory in from manufacturers, but they would still own it until you sold it, and it would mature. It may mature in 12 months. But
meaning you would owe them the money after 12 months?
Yeah, if you hadn't paid off, if you hadn't paid for it, sold it, you'd have to pay it off in 12 months. They did not take it back.
Yeah. So if you were not moving inventory, you had a big risk.
Big cash flow problem.
A lot of money.
Yeah, yep. So there were a lot of up and downs with cash flow back in those days. And as I say, with the interest rates, you're just writing checks every month for interest, not to mention whatever you're selling. So floor plan was a thing which you would never want to get involved with. So I had to look at everything as a profit center.
Sure.
Is this making money? Is this making money? Is that making money? Is this making money? And if it wasn't making money, get rid of it and change it and find something else that worked.
Yeah.
And
how are you keeping track of all that?
Oh, there was this stuff called pencil and paper back in the day.
Weird.
Yeah. You would actually have this white or yellow stuff with lines on it.
Okay.
And a pencil, you could sharpen in this little thing. Yeah. Sharpen. And you would write notes and keep ledgers and stuff.
Wow.
It was pretty amazing.
That's
pretty
cool.
amazing.
It must have been hard to get around before cars.
I walked to work a lot.
Yeah.
On Sundays, I'd be home with ledger cards, typing up bills.
Oy.
Typing up bills on Sunday.
So sounds like my nightmare.
And then we got a computer.
Okay. What year is this?
This was 1985, maybe?
All right.
Our first computer had an 8088 processor. Any of you computer nerds out there, an 88 was an early processor, courtesy of IBM or whoever.
Okay.
Little green monitor, little monitor. Yeah.
Yeah.
$10,000 for a system that didn't work,
Oh my God.
Jesus. We were always cutting edge.
Of course.
Yeah.
Still are. So you were managing all the business, paper and pencil, putting in all this time and work just to make it run.
So for fun, I played in bands.
Yeah.
Because there are 24 hours in the day.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, and who needs to sleep?
Or parent.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so, I mean, it seems like you had a lot of fun running the business. Like,
fun.
Despite the challenges, I was going to ask, like, what kept you going?
Well, it was great. There was always, back again in the day as we became one of the 2 music stores in town, we still had a lot of retail business. A lot of area bands would come through. A lot of local bands we would deal with. Some guys who are still around today. So it was always good to have people coming in, trying out guitars, banging on drums.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'd say one of my favorite parts of working here is people who used to come here in the 80s come in and talk about what this place meant to them. And they'd say, oh, yeah, I used to come in and hang out, and this place was awesome, and Corb was so cool. So you and the people who worked here created a really good atmosphere for
Yeah,
young kids and musicians.
Yeah,
and,
definitely. And now a thing that's happened for years is that we have second generation students.
right.
You know, parents who took lessons here,
Yeah.
bringing their kids in for lessons.
Right.
And it's not unusual to see that.
I think we've had some grandkids too.
I wouldn't be surprised. Excuse me.
So at a certain point, there was a shift in the business. Now you're responding to all the challenges, and one of them was big box retail, right?
Yes. There was the big player in town, and there was us. The big player was Wurlitzer Music, EU Wurlitzer out of Boston. There was us, and Liberty Music. And then the big wolf came to town. Guitar Center came to town.
Woof.
Woof, woof.
Uh-huh.
They were right down the street, not far down the street.
Yeah.
And that became a total eye-opener.
Keep you up at night?
Not them so much. They certainly presented the challenge and taking a real hard look at what we were doing as Center Music House. Where are we going with this?
Okay, so
What
it
are
made
we going to
you
do?
take a look at, like, how do we fit into this picture,
Right.
and what do we want to be as a
where's
business?
our play
Yeah.
in the music business in this area?
Yeah.
And at that point, again, looking at our profit centers, I said, okay, we're going to get rid of high-end guitars. We're going to get rid of sound systems. We're going to get rid of big amplifiers and massive drum sets. And we're going to shorten the back room and create a couple of teaching studios. So we shortened the back room by about 8 or 10 feet.
I remember that.
Built a couple of
Saw the
studios.
stuff, built that.
Got rid of the guitars over here. Built a studio there. I think we subdivided something upstairs. Yeah, we subdivided a room upstairs, cut 2 studios out of one, and said, okay, we're going to really focus on the teaching. We've always done a good job. We've always had great teachers.
Yeah.
We're going to really focus on the teaching and what it takes to support the students, young students, in terms of a merchandise mix.
Right. So the retail became less focused on bands and performers and more focused on the people who were taking lessons here.
Right.
So beginner guitars, beginner drum sets,
Right.
that sort of thing.
So at the same time, in terms of retail, there were other shakeups happening because now Guitar Center was in town. Wurlitzer had kind of overextended their operation, and they eventually failed away. There was another big chain in the New England area called Daddy's Junkie Music.
Oh, yeah.
They were very big. They went away. We were fortunate in never overstepping our bounds and being small enough to turn quickly. The big operations couldn't turn that fast. It's harder to move a big ship than it is a rowboat. we were bigger than a rowboat.
Yeah, that's a little more credit. We got an engine.
We're a PT boat.
Yeah.
We were able to adapt more quickly than the big guys.
Yeah.
And speaking of big guys, then another big guy came to town. There was this guy named Bagelman out of, I believe, maybe the appliance industry, who was going to show the music industry how to do retail.
And this is Mars Guitar.
This was Mars Music.
Mars Music.
So he opened up a store in between us and Guitar Center.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So he was going to do his best to undercut everybody on prices
Yeah.
and show us how to do music retail. By this time, we had already kind of established our direction, and so we just sat back and watched. So
Watch Mars and Guitar Center duke it out.
duke it out. We kept our heads down, concentrated on our teaching operation, concentrated on what we did best, was
Yeah.
teaching and entry-level stuff.
And this is the 90s at this point?
Somebody tell me, I can't remember.
Well, at that point, I remember going to Mars.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was probably the
What were you doing at Mars?
Yeah. Well, we
What was
went
it?
there because they closed.
Okay, so that's the long. So when they opened, like I was nervous when Guitar Center opened. When Mars opened, I took my wife to Belgium for the weekend. I said, I'm just getting out of here.
Yeah, I'm done.
Screw this.
I've seen this before.
So they stayed in business for a few years, but it didn't last forever. And they ended up going under. They burned a lot of manufacturers for millions of dollars.
Wow.
Except for Yamaha. Yamaha's a smart corporation.
They are smart.
But everybody else got burned for millions and millions of dollars.
Wow.
We gained from that in that we got most of the guitar hooks on the wall here from their display room.
And the counter
and the
front
cabinet
room.
out there and the cabinets. And,
Yeah.
And so we went down and picked what was left.
Yeah, thank you.
Sometimes it's good to stay in your bounds. Not that we don't want to grow.
Yeah.
But we know what we want to do.
But no, I think it takes a lot of work and a real love of what we do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not just 9 to 5, show up, put in your work, and go home. You take it with you.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. It's a lifestyle.
Especially when you're the sole proprietor, when you're the owner. All that responsibility is on you.
As you're about to find out.
I have found out. Yeah. You know, you got to make sure there's money in the bank so that when a teacher goes to cash their paycheck, it doesn't bounce.
Right. Exactly.
You know, that's important.
And there were days when I would make a sale and I would run down to the bank with that money to put in the bank to make sure Arthur's paycheck would clear.
I mean, I've been here for 11 years. I've certainly seen the business change a lot over that time. 50 years, I can only imagine. What we're hearing right now is only a snippet.
Oh yeah.
Of what you've been through and what you've seen. Can you talk more about how the family has been involved over the years?
Being a family business, the family kind of grew up here. I mean, you were a little kid.
Yeah.
Your sister May was a little kid, hanging out in the music store, running around. Max used to go into the display counter and start all the metronomes. He used to love to hear the metronomes going click, click. So
I still do that every day.
Yeah, that's a Zen moment. Zen moment. I used to push you around in boxes. You know, if we got a big box in, Max would climb on the box, push me around. You know, so I push him around the store like he was driving a car in a little box.
Good times.
Good times, yeah.
Yeah.
And his sister May helped out in the shop. She took lessons here. And pitched in when necessary, as necessary. Sure. When we went to China, she helped run the shop. When you were in China, we went over to visit you in China. She ran the shop and shoveled snow during a blizzard.
And your brother Pete worked here for a while.
Yeah, my brother Pete worked here for in the 80s, in the early 80s. He did a lot of construction here and helped out behind the counter so it's been a real family business. Yeah. For some time.
Did Mom ever work here?
Behind the scenes, she did. We used to do window displays, and she would, when Christmas we built a bunch of gnomes for the window display and so forth. And she picks out the paint colors.
That's right.
Yeah, picks out the paint colors, approves the carpets.
Yep. And then I came along.
And you came along.
I consider us super lucky that we have a good relationship and get along most of the time.
Most of the time.
And have a shared love of this business and music.
Yeah, and music, yeah.
And can help each other out and make it what it is.
Yeah, we've grown a lot.
Yeah, and now where it was once 4 or 5 teachers, we have 25. Yeah. Hundreds of students. I mean, so many people have come here over the years, whether they rent a clarinet or take guitar lessons or just come and hang out or shop. Like I said before, a lot of people come in and just kind of gush about this place and what it meant for them. Russell, who runs our rock band camps now, he would come in here when he was a teenager and he was like, "Oh yeah, I was a weird kid, but your dad was always just super nice to me and would let me just hang out and be a weird kid." And I just needed a place to hang out. Yeah.
We still have weird kids.
Yeah. So what do you think makes this place so special?
People. Yeah. It's a people place. It's a people-based place. Yeah. We've always concentrated on have a very good staff, great teachers who really care about what they do, and we don't care whether they've got a PhD or a GED. You know, if they're a good teacher, that's what's important to us. Knowledgeable so that we can answer questions. Yeah. You know, there's a few decades of stuff up here still. At least. Some that I can pull back, pull out. But if we don't know what we're talking about, we'll admit it and send people elsewhere. Yeah. Send people on. Sorry.
It's a business built on relationships.
Yeah. We don't work on commissions. We just work on doing the right thing.
What do you see the future of this place being?
I think the pizza ovens will go over here, and the sub count, no.
Sounds good to me.
Well, I think we're on a good path. We keep on developing the music programs. We certainly have our dreams of someday having a bigger place.
Yeah.
So if somebody has $3 million you care to send our way, we'll take it. No, so we would love to grow the location, but it's I've had my time and now it's your time. So
that's right.
So it's going to be up to you because I'm worn out.
You're back to repairing guitars.
I'm back
just
to
like where you
repairing
started.
guitars and playing golf. Yeah.
There you go.
There you go.
Cool.
So there are a lot of avenues that still can be explored, and keep the music going.
Yeah.
It's all about the music.
That's right. Cool.
The power of music.
Well, thanks, Dad.
Well, thanks, Max.
Yeah, thanks for the time. Thanks for sharing the stories. Maybe we'll get to more one day. Until then, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary.
Woo.
If you guys have any stories that you want to share about your experience here, please leave a comment, whether you're watching on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, whatever it is. Share your story. We'd love to hear it. And come visit too. We'd love to see you.
Yeah, even just to say hi and chat. Cool.
Cheers.
Cheers. Love you, Max.
All right, love you too, Dad.
Peace.